The daytime stood still. The hunt for the London bombers. Intro. 52 commuters, 4 devastating explosions, 1 iconic city, suddenly holding its breath. In the space of just 56 minutes, London, a city that prides itself on its stoic resilience, went from its normal morning grind to suffering the deadliest terror strike in British history. It was a day that ripped through the fabric of everyday life, leaving behind a silence that was deafening, quickly followed by the sounds of chaos and despair. Investigators would soon have to sift through an unimaginable 6,000 hours of CCTV footage, desperately hunting for faces that chillingly looked just like everybody else, and a secret that nobody in Britain wanted to believe. This is the story of how they did it, how a city fractured, and how it began to heal. Section 1. The Blasts. It was 8:49 a.m. on July 7th, 2005, a seemingly ordinary Thursday morning. The tube was packed, as always, with people heading to work, grabbing coffee, starting their day. Then, without warning, 3 bombs detonated almost simultaneously. One ripped through an underground train just outside Liverpool Street, another near Edgware Road, and a third struck close to King's Cross. The impact was immediate, catastrophic, but the horror wasn't over. An hour later, at 9:47 a.m., a 4th bomb tore the roof off a double-decker bus in Tavistock Square, adding another layer of terror to an already unfolding nightmare. Survivors, those who could speak, described a sudden, ringing silence in the immediate aftermath, a moment of profound disbelief before reality set in. Then, the acrid smell of burning metal, the dust, and the screams. Emergency crews, heroes in every sense of the word, arrived within a miraculous 4 minutes, rushing into unimaginable scenes of carnage. The entire tube network, the pulsating veins of the city, was shut down by 9:20 a.m., an unprecedented move that underscored the gravity of the situation. By lunchtime, every major hospital in London had declared a major incident, their staff bracing for a flood of casualties. The death toll would tragically climb to 52, ordinary people going about their day, their lives cut short. Nearly 800 others were injured, many severely, bearing both physical and psychological scars that would last a lifetime. But beyond the immediate devastation, there was one chilling, gut-wrenching realization that would shake the nation to its core. The men carrying these bombs, the perpetrators of this unspeakable violence, were not some shadowy foreign entity. They were British. Section 2. The Scramble. In the immediate aftermath, the city was plunged into a desperate scramble. Police, accustomed to chasing bank robbers and investigating street-level crime, found themselves suddenly thrust into an entirely new, terrifying landscape, hunting suicide bombers. A makeshift command center was hastily set up on the 16th floor of Scotland Yard, a hive of activity where seasoned officers grappled with the unthinkable. Their first grim task? To meticulously work out who had died by tragic accident, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, and who had chosen to die, becoming instruments of terror. It was a distinction that spoke volumes about the nature of the attack. Forensic teams, true unsung heroes, descended upon the 4 blast sites. They worked tirelessly, painstakingly, collecting 28,000 items of evidence. Each fragment, each twisted piece of metal, each personal belonging, potentially holding a vital clue. Every single piece was tagged, logged with meticulous care, and then sent to a specialized laboratory in Kent, a facility usually accustomed to handling cold case murders, not a terror attack of this scale. Meanwhile, transport for London, recognizing the critical role of surveillance in a modern city, handed over every single frame of CCTV footage from every station, every platform, and every bus route. The sheer volume was staggering. The pile of discs containing thousands upon thousands of hours of footage stood taller than a desk. Investigators, overwhelmed but determined, aptly nicknamed this monumental challenge the haystack problem. Section 3, the haystack. 6,000 hours of CCTV. Just think about that for a second. That's 250 solid days of footage, day and night. One officer, trying to articulate the immense task, famously compared it to watching every single episode of a soap opera back-to-back, without a break. Except, in this grim real-life drama, the characters never spoke, and the ending, the identification of the culprits, might just be the key to preventing another tragedy, or perhaps even lead to their own demise. Where do you even begin to look in such an overwhelming sea of images? They started with the bus, the double-decker ripped open like a tin can, its top deck peeled back to expose its interior. Miraculously, the upper deck camera had survived the explosion, and there it was. Footage showed a young man, seemingly unremarkable, dressed in a white t-shirt and a New York Yankees cap, calmly reaching into a rucksack. He wasn't overtly suspicious, wasn't drawing attention to himself. He was just there. Then, at 9:47 a.m., the picture went black, the moment of detonation. That single, harrowing clip, capturing the final seconds before the blast, was a pivotal breakthrough. It didn't just show them a face, it shaved the enormous timeline down to mere minutes. Now, armed with a face and a precise time, they finally knew where to look on the underground footage. The haystack suddenly had a much smaller needle to find. Section 4. The breakthrough. With that crucial lead, detectives began to painstakingly build a minute-by-minute map, piecing together the movements of the suspects. It was like creating a horrifying jigsaw puzzle, each CCTV frame a tiny, vital piece. The timeline started to form. At 7:21 a.m., 4 men bought return tickets at Luton Station, a seemingly innocuous act. Then, at 7:48 a.m., they boarded the 7:58 Thameslink train, bound for King's Cross. One of the cameras, positioned perfectly, caught them laughing on the escalator, backpacks slung loosely over one shoulder, blending in with the morning rush. Investigators froze the frame, zooming in on their faces. What they saw wasn't the stereotypical image of a terrorist often portrayed in media. There were no long beards, no traditional robes, no obvious red flags screaming danger. Just 4 young guys in trainers, perhaps looking like they were heading to a football match or a day out with friends. Their names would soon become etched in infamy: Tanweer, Hussein, Lindsay, Khan. These were not foreign operatives, but British citizens. Except, of course, they weren't carrying football gear. They were carrying military-grade explosives, packed around hydrogen peroxide and pepper, designed to inflict maximum carnage. This image, this chilling still of their ordinary faces, would later appear on front pages around the world under the stark, unforgettable headline, "The Faces of Evil." Inside the yard, in the cold, clinical language of the investigation, they simply referred to it as the Still. It was a stark reminder of how easily terror could hide in plain sight. Section 5. The Aftermath. By the time the names of the bombers were publicly released, the intelligence wheels were already in motion. Raids had begun in Leeds and Aylesbury, the communities where these men had lived. Neighbors, reeling from the shock, told reporters the same bewildering story. The men were quiet, polite, normal. One had worked in his dad's fish and chip shop, serving customers with a smile. Another taught disabled kids to cycle. A seemingly compassionate act. How could such ordinary lives conceal such monstrous intent? The truth, as it often is, was far more complex and uncomfortable. The intelligence services, in a candid admission following the attacks, revealed that some of the bombers had indeed appeared on the periphery of older surveillance operations. They weren't entirely unknown, but critically, they were never designated as priority targets. Resources were finite, stretched thin across numerous potential threats, and other plots, at the time, had looked bigger, more imminent. The official committee report, when it finally landed, did so with a heavy thud, its conclusions stark and sobering. We cannot guarantee this could not happen again. It was a chilling acknowledgement of the persistent and evolving nature of the threat. Britain's terror threat level remained at critical for weeks, an unprecedented period of high alert. Life in London changed almost overnight. Backpacks, once an innocent commuter accessory, were now eyed with suspicion and routinely searched on the tube. Bins, potential hiding places for devices, were sealed shut across the city. A city that had always prided itself on its calm resilience and its ability to carry on, learned a new, unsettling habit: to always check the exits, to be subtly, constantly aware of its surroundings. Section 6. The Shift. The 7/7 bombings didn't just change London. They fundamentally shifted Britain's understanding of terrorism. Politicians, grappling with the unprecedented nature of the attacks, called it a new kind of war. This wasn't about foreign cells slipping through ports, an enemy clearly defined and external. This was different. The enemy, they realized, was homegrown, radicalized not in distant lands, but online, in local gyms, in the very communities they lived in. It was a terrifying realization that demanded a radical overhaul of national security. Funding for domestic intelligence doubled overnight, a clear signal of the government's renewed focus on internal threats. Community groups, often on the front lines of social cohesion, received grants to run youth clubs and anti-extremism workshops, an attempt to counter radical narratives at their source. Imams who had preached fire and brimstone, whose rhetoric was deemed inflammatory, faced deportation, a controversial but decisive move. This period saw the birth of the Prevent strategy, a cornerstone of the UK's counter-terrorism efforts designed to stop people from becoming terrorists or supporting terrorism. Critics, understandably, called it spying on Muslim communities, arguing it fostered mistrust and alienated those it sought to protect. Supporters, however, saw it as a vital tool for survival, a necessary measure in the face of a terrifying new reality. Either way, the old clear boundary between us and them blurred irrevocably. It never really sharpened again. The attacks forced a national reckoning with identity, belonging, and the unseen dangers lurking within. If these details feel like they were ripped straight from a thriller, remember they happened to real commuters on an ordinary Thursday. This wasn't fiction, it was life, terrifyingly interrupted. Hit subscribe if you want more stories that turn headlines into human timelines, and stick around, because the hunt for justice and the fight against terror didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. Section 7. The Lessons. From the ashes of the attacks, crucial lessons were learned and innovations born. Forensic scientists, pushed to their limits, developed entirely new techniques to lift fingerprints and vital DNA from shredded paper and bomb fragments, advancing the science of crime solving. Transport police, now acutely aware of the subtle signs of danger, trained every driver, every conductor, every station attendant to spot nervous passengers with sweaty palms, or those carrying backpacks on their fronts in an unnatural way. It was about sharpening observation, understanding human behavior under pressure. And the public? They too learned. Sometimes subtly, sometimes not so subtly, people started reporting anything that seemed weird, out of place, or suspicious. The phrase, "see it, say it, sorted," became more than just a catchy slogan. It echoed through every station, every public space, a constant reminder of collective vigilance. One detective, reflecting years later on the monumental effort, admitted the hardest part wasn't the grueling overtime, the endless hours sifting through evidence. It was walking past the memorial of flowers, pinned to the railings outside the stations, each bloom a silent tribute, and knowing, with a profound ache, that the list of names could have been so much longer. They keep a copy of the still, that image of the four ordinary-looking men, in the training wing now. It serves as a permanent chilling reminder that in the world of counterterrorism, ordinary is often the most dangerous and the best disguise. Conclusion: 56 minutes. That's all it took for a city to be changed forever. Investigators, through an almost superhuman effort, cracked the case and identified the perpetrators in a remarkable 13 days. But the physical scars, and especially the psychological wounds, took years to scab over, and for many, they remain. Next time you ride the tube, that iconic symbol of London life, and hear the automated voice warn you to mind the gap, take a moment to remember. Once upon a July morning, that seemingly innocuous gap swallowed 52 lives and shook a nation awake to a new, terrifying reality. The bombers thought they could rupture time, tear it apart with their violence. Instead, they froze it, one harrowing frame at a time, until justice, relentless and determined, caught up. The clocks kept ticking. London kept moving, resilient and unbowed. And the cameras, those silent witnesses, never blinked again.